he's doing this book signing afterwards, and this cop shows up whose name is literally Captain Fash, like fascism, which is really, really funny. And he's
that is just what I refer to most police officers when I see them. The other words I can't say on the air.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, Dan Brown is a cap.
I like that Dan Brown's like, we're playing with symbolism. Hey, the bad guy's a fascist.
Captain Fash! He's about as subtle as, 1950s Stan Lee.
Welcome to Bible Boys, a podcast where two ex-evangelical siblings and an ex-Catholic non-sibling watch Christian media and either praise or condemn it. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Michael.
And please join us this week as we hunt for the Holy Grail in the Da Vinci Code. Before we unlock the secret of the Green siblings' true bloodline, please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, like and comment on our video, and follow us on Twitter at The Bible Boys. Gentlemen, how did you like this week's movie?
I mean, I'm slightly offended because I am a direct descendant of Mary Magdalene, so...
And I'm upset because I am not, which is weirdly. Our parents have yet to explain that one to me.
Immaculate Conception.
I was going to say, did one of you not get immaculately conceived? That sucks.
Yeah, I'm like Jesus' brothers.
Fun Catholic note, Immaculate Conception doesn't refer to Jesus being impregnated Mary. It actually refers to Mary's Immaculate Conception without sin in her mother.
Really?
Okay,
yes,
Catholics
that's 100%
are just
true.
making stuff up now.
It's really stupid.
It's so neat.
Speaking of really stupid.
Yeah, Jesus wasn't special.
No,
Mary was.
Oh
anyway.
my god.
So, The Da Vinci Code is a movie that I wanted to talk about because Peacock is doing a prequel to The Da Vinci Code, which is very, very funny to me. Because as anybody who's read Dan Brown's Langdon series knows, Robert Langdon is an extremely author insert character. And I do have to give it up for that. Like, this dude is the most successful American author, I think, ever. He has sold millions and millions of copies of his books, and it's basically just self-insert fanfic about what if he got to solve all these cool historical mysteries. And I respect that. If you're gonna write a book, you might as well fucking shoot for the moon. And Dan Brown did. So I actually didn't know that Angels and Demons was the first book in this series. I was wrong. I was looking that up on Wikipedia, but it's actually the first one. But the Da Vinci Code is the one that really popped off. It's what kind of got a lot of controversy and turned Dan Brown into a very popular author in the early 2000s. The book came out in 2003, and this became a movie with Tom Hanks in 2006. And it's... Do we have any thoughts before we get into the plot?
It's a film. It was shot on a camera. It's starring Tom Hanks.
Is it? I love... Can we... I don't know if you guys are able to look at the poster of this. That's not Tom Hanks. That is a robot's guess at what Tom Hanks looks like. That is a forehead with Tom Hanks kind of grafted onto the chin. That is a terrible shot of Mr. Hanks.
Just grimacing, yeah.
I mean... The theatrical release poster looks like a horror film, and that is making me wish that's the film that we got.
It's a horror film if you're afraid of albinos and people with disabilities. Yeah, this is an extremely 2003... had some interesting takes on people with different skin pigmentation and disabilities, which is a choice...
Extrapolate upon that as you will.
I think we should cancel Dan Brown, guy.
Let's go get him. Go get him.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure he'll be devastated.
I want to ask you guys now, do you guys know about the lawsuit surrounding this movie?
I looked up a little of them, but yes.
Okay, so I'll sprinkle this when we get into the full plot, but Mr. Dan Brown didn't... This isn't full fan fic. This is him stealing a fanfic.
Yeah, this is plagiarism. I did know that because I did historical homework.
Unlike
Okay,
Mr. Brown.
What are you talking about? This is a pretty historically accurate movie.
He does put at the beginning of all his books, like, this is 100% real. Everything is 100% historically accurate, and we'll talk about that. But let's start with the opening scene of this movie, which is this hitman named Silas, who is the aforementioned person with albinism, chasing down the Saunier, Jacques Saunier, who is the curator of the Louvre. And he's like, hey, if you don't tell me about this secret thing, I'll shoot you. And he's like, oh, well, okay, here's the secret. And then Silas is like, thank you. And then he shoots him. And that's how the movie starts. It is certainly an opening, but that's not where it gets interesting. No. Where it gets interesting is where we get to Professor Robert Langdon, who we are introduced to as he is doing this this Harvard, I think it's a Harvard lecture, even though people are like clapping and applauding as he enters the room, which, like, I know there's some universities that like do that, like hey, you should applaud after your professor's done teaching to thank them. And that's a weird tradition, but like I don't think people would be like, yo, it's Professor Langdon, he's gonna tell us all about fucking Poseidon, damn.
Holy shit, is it the symbologist? Oh my god! Oh, it's the symbologist!
His official title is Symbologist, which is really funny.
That just feels like a Gwyneth Paltrow title. Like, you just gave it to yourself. It's not really a thing. And you know what? I'm here for it. That actually makes me like the professor a little bit more.
If you click on the little blue symbologist thing on Wikipedia, it just sends you to the Yep, it just sends you to the Wikipedia page for symbol.
Hey, you fucked it up. Wanna try again?
It just sends you to you know how things can mean other things.
Better luck next time,
This guy.
kid. And you know what? Things meaning other things is exactly why we watched this movie. I know the whole premise is like, what if Jesus had a kid? But I think the most unrealistic part of this movie is the fact that the college students are responding to his questions during his lecture so quickly. Like, the one point he like holds up like a picture that's like, he's doing this PowerPoint, and if there's a zoom in on a trident, and he's like, oh, what is this? And then like immediately 8 people are like, oh, it's the devil, it's the sign of the devil, it's something evil. And then he zooms out and he's like, oh, it's poor Poseidon. And it's like, oh, this movie fucking sucks.
Yeah, like, I'm that student, but I have to own that not everyone's that student that's like, I know the fucking answer, I got this.
Great.
If this movie was correct, someone who was auditing the class would raise their hand and talk for 35 minutes about how the kids these days really don't understand that racism isn't as big of a deal as you think it is. And then the teacher would politely try to have them not talk anymore.
That is actually the college experience.
Love college.
So at his book signing, he's doing a book signing, so it can't be a lecture. It's got to be some sort of weird presentation. I refuse to believe this is a lecture, but like, he's doing this book signing afterwards, and this cop shows up whose name is literally Captain Fash, like fascism, which is really, really funny. And he's
that is just what I refer to most police officers when I see them. The other words I can't say on the air.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, Dan Brown is a cap.
I like that Dan Brown's like, you know, we're playing with symbolism. Hey, the bad guy's a fascist.
Captain Fash! He's about as subtle as, like, 1950s Stan Lee.
So Captain Fash is like, I need you to come to Paris with me. I don't know if he's in France at the time of this lecture. I assume he's in Boston, where Harvard is.
I thought he was in Paris already, and they were like, hey, this thing is happening, like, down the street.
That would make a lot more sense, because he had met with Saunier earlier, and that's why they're like, oh, hey, we gotta talk to Langdon.
I still cannot excuse the, like, standing ovation, the applause, any of that, because I just do not know that there are that many people in the world, let alone in Paris, that are just horny for symbols.
I cannot imagine an American in 2003 getting a standing ovation from a bunch of young Parisians. Like, absolutely not.
They would all just be smoking a cigarette, being like, this is so boring.
You do not understand the folly that is the trident.
Great, good. Now we're slandering the French, too. Awesome.
As we should.
Not for the right reasons, though.
If you're French, like, comment, and subscribe.
Okay, so, God. There's also a lot of cuts in this, which I think corresponds to the book, because the book also does, like, a lot of cuts. The book in its original release was over 600 pages long in hardback, so, like, this is a fucking doorstopper. It's a lot of scenery descriptions, apparently.
Just so we can talk about anything other than this movie, you guys have that book that you walk by and you're like, never in 1,000 years will I ever read that, simply because it is fucking huge.
I mean, I guess for me, it's either War and Peace by Tolstoy or just like any of the Song of Ice and Fire.
I read all of A Song of Ice and Fire, so no, I am broken. I am broken down, beaten down like a drum. I read a 1,200-page hardback book. I can handle it.
Yeah, I read those after him, immediately after. Just, he finished one, passed it right on to this Green Brother. But even I look at, like, Dune, and I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna watch fucking Timothée Chalamet in theaters in December.
That old twink stealing jobs from my brother.
Great. Sorry. Just come at us, Timothy. Anyway, so we get this
really
shot.
are anti-French, huh?
Yeah, we're really
fuck
coming
the French.
for them.
If you're Timothée Chalamet, like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes, please do, Mr. Chalamet.
This movie sucks. Sorry, Aaron.
This movie's great, and y'all don't understand how good this movie is.
I'm just gonna try to talk about everything that's not this, so I'm gonna really try to derail you.
Mm-hmm. You'll be editing this podcast if that's the case. So we do get a shot of the monk after he kills Saunier, and he's like, he does this thing, so it shows all this self-flagellation, and like he has a chalice, I believe, or a cilice, and it like does some very graphic shots of him like taking this whip and beating himself with it, and you know, taking this chain and tying it around his thigh, and like it's supposed to be like, oh, look how weird and scary he is. Let's put a pin in that for the very end of this podcast, because we'll talk about that. But he does literally say, "I chastise my body," which rules. It's a good scene.
That is what I say every time before I DoorDash Taco Bell.
Great. So Langdon meets Fash. He gives him a lecture about how the pyramids in the Louvre are in pairs, which is very funny. And Fash is like, "I don't give a shit." We learned that Langdon's claustrophobic. And then we cut to this Opus Dei bishop, whose name is Aringarosa, who is a real Catholic, and I like him because he's like, we're not fucking cafeteria Catholics. We will organize a coup to stamp out the non-believers. He rules also.
Fun fact, this organization is real.
Yep, we'll be talking about them. Yeah, but he's the guy who's like a father figure to Silas the monk, so keep that in mind. God. Langdon does at this point, because they get to the body, right? And the whole like the cover of one of the books is like the Fibonacci, or not the Fibonacci sequence, but the Vitruvian Man, which is a famous Leonardo da Vinci sketch of a naked guy with like all his limbs poking out. And, you know, it's, you know, at the time it would have been like a cool example of anatomy, but what happens is like Saunier did this. He made this weird sketch of his own, like with his own body, and he like drew with his blood, and like it's supposed to be grotesque and weird, but he also left secret messages with his blood, and it's very wild.
What's wild is they can't seem to decide how comfortable with like the more grotesque aspects of this are, because at first they show us like flashes, like we're just getting like crime scene photos, like real quick. And then they just kind of linger on like the top part of his body, which is like mutilated, but not as mutilated because, you know, they still have to have the actor there. And it's just so fascinating to me because usually a film like chooses a direction, right? Like You've got your Midsommar, where it's like, nope, we are making you look at this. You will not forget it. Or you'll have like the flip side of that, which is what is done in a lot of true crime, where they're like, we're showing you nothing, everything's your imagination. It is rare for a movie to do both and neither.
How familiar are you guys with the hit classic movie Todd Phillips' Joker? Because this truly, just this scene specifically, feels like it is like if Todd Phillips was like, I'm making a Riddler movie. What if it has the Fibonacci sequence in it? Like, I hate this so much. It's just a bad National Treasure movie.
It rules. I don't know what you're talking about.
I hate that you said that, because off-cast I said I always get these films and National Treasure confused because I only like one of them, and National Treasure's the one I like.
I was about to say National Treasure, the first one, not bad.
Yeah.
Not a bad flick. I would watch the second one over this.
Here's the
Can we
thing.
watch that instead?
I think that only two people could make this character of Robert Langdon likable, and they are Tom Hanks and Nicolas Cage.
I don't think Nicolas Cage made a likable character.
No, but like enjoyable to watch.
Yes.
I think if we got the Da Vinci Code with Nick Cage and National Treasure with Tom Hanks, we would be actually living in the good timeline.
Yeah, that is Earth A.
Anyway, so this cryptographer, Sophie Gagne, who is the granddaughter of this murdered guy, shows up, and she's like, hey, the cops are looking for you because my grandfather actually wrote a secret other message that was like, hey, find Robert Langdon. He didn't really write a postscript that was like, this guy didn't kill me, but he would be useful in finding out the murderer and all my secrets. But he didn't have enough blood for that, so...
Yeah, and we all know, thanks to this film, PS does not stand for postscript. It stands for Princess Sophie. So, whenever you are adding a PS, just remember Princess Sophie.
Thank you. Anyway, I guess have they escaped yet? I don't really know. Their escape isn't very interesting. They throw a GPS tracker out the window, and all the cops immediately leave, which is very funny. And like they find a secret message on the Mona Lisa, and that gets them to their next clue. But I did make a note that like they mentioned the secret priory of Sion, and I was like, I pretty regularly play Dungeons and Dragons, and that's actually the nerdiest thing I've said all week. Like this, it is so wild to me that this was such a success, because this is some like extremely fantasy bullshit that's happening here.
Well, what's wild is the Priory of Sion is a real thing, and I'll get to that in my fun facts, because I have a lot of fun facts about the Priory of Sion.
Thank you, finally. There is a very good chase scene with Sophie and Langdon escaping in her shitty little smart car. Back in the early 2000s, I guess that was a popular thing, is to have these shitty little cars. And I just loved her, like, fucking doing this cool escape scene, like, going between trucks and, like, smashing windshields off, and it was great.
I just kind of wish that at some point, Langdon had just been like, oh no, my Google Glass!
I felt like it was actually an indictment on Americans hating on smart cars. It's like, see you, bitch, this is the best car for a chase scene.
That's such a good point. We get a flashback of Silas stabbing his dad because he was abused as a child, and how he meets Aringarosa and gets converted to Opus Dei. And they make the point that's like, oh, his dad calls him a phantasma, a ghost, but Aringarosa calls him an angel. So that's how you know that he's good, and that his albinism doesn't make him a horrible freak of nature, like I guess this book wants us to think. It's such bad positioning. Anyway, he rolls up to this church where the clue that Sonia gave him like leads to. He finds a box he like breaks a tile, and it's like, oh, Job 38:11, which is like, hitherto shall thou come but no further. And then the nun who is protecting the secret's like, hey, don't do the secret. And he's like, no. And then he kills her, and then he does some fucking... one of my favorite parts of this movie is after he kills this nun, he like says a prayer for her. It's extremely like Assassin's Creed Resquiescat and Pace. Like This movie shares a lot of DNA with Assassin's Creed, and I love that so much.
I would rather watch Assassin's Creed cutscenes.
That's Aaron's next pick.
Don't get me started. Don't get me excited about that.
And I watched the one where weirdly they fight lust demons and titties are everywhere again. How funny would it have been if he had opened that box and it just was like John 3:16?
Just like a completely irrelevant verse. That would be pretty good.
Just like a dude bro, like, only through the Lord. And it's got like 3 emojis that are like prayer things.
Like a youth pastor TikTok or something.
It just says, if you believe God's not dead, share this to your Facebook wall.
Just the Newsboy starts playing when you open the box.
For 10 minutes.
I want the Da Vinci Code Newsboys crossover so bad.
Oh no, his lungs are filling with blood.
Stop.
Oh no, the papyrus is filling with vinegar.
We're the only people in the world that think that's funny. Oh my god.
That's
Anyway.
an actual plot point in this film, listeners.
Yeah.
That is an actual plot point. I am not making that up.
We'll get to the vinegar soon. So they are running from the cops. Sophie, for some reason, goes up to a guy who's shooting heroin. And she's like, if you give me $50, I'll give you 50 euros if you just give me all your stuff. And he's like, thanks, I guess. And then he leaves. So that was, weird. But then...
Cool to do, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, I guess.
Why did he have to be shooting heroin? I would do that.
Wait,
like,
I would shoot heroin?
No. Like, if someone came out and was like, $50 for all the stuff you have on you, I'd be like, yeah, deal.
I just am left with more questions after this scene because, like, I don't know the cost of heroin, but I have to believe the amount he gave her was more than 50 euros.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was 2003. Maybe the heroin prices hadn't gone up yet.
Have you guys seen Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
We're not talking about Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Don't do this to me, Joshua.
I'd like one crack rock, please.
We have to talk about how the Priory of Sion did the Crusades.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh yeah, important.
My favorite thing is, like, so he's explaining the history of the Priory of Sion to Sophie, and he's like, anyway, so they did the Crusades to find the Holy Grail, and then they did, and then they came back to Rome and they blackmailed the Pope, and the church gave them limitless power, and then, like, 2 years later, they killed all the Templars.
I do like that he's basically, like, going into this narrative and then ends it with, allegedly.
Allegedly. Asterisk.
Like, it was all caps, like this grand story, and then like tiny little parentheses at the bottom of the page, allegedly.
You guys have not read enough history books, because there are definitely chapters that are like, now here's the good shit. Now most of that probably didn't happen, but like, wasn't it fun to read?
I just lied to you for a while, but what if it was true?
Anyway, Julius Caesar.
You are really trying to avoid talking about this film.
I don't want to say it's such a bad movie.
Okay, we get to another secret meeting. It is mentioned in the movie that this secret Opus Dei council is literally called the Council of Shadows, which fucking owns. This is a good movie.
Don't you see, Aaron? It's a symbol because they operate in the shadows.
Nothing is true, Michael. Everything is permitted.
Just keep going. I've got a tangent, and it's got nothing to do with any of this. Just keep going.
Anyway, the Bishop Aringarosa reveals that someone named the Teacher is setting them on the path to the Grail, and it's all going to get resolved tonight, as long as Silas can do his mission. So they go to, like, this Swiss bank vault place, and they got a secret key from Saunier somehow, and they get into this box, they open the key, and the cops show up, and for a second I thought this fucking Swiss bank guy was super cool, because he's like, okay, you have a safe passage clause, which means if the cops show up, fuck the police, and I'm getting you out of here, which I was like, yes, that rules, I love the Swiss. And then later when he ditches them, it turns out he was just trying to murder them and take their stuff, which is sad.
If you examine the history of Swiss banking, they don't really care who puts the gold in their bank accounts, whether they're Nazis or Nazis or Nazis.
Yeah. While they're in this like car, they're hiding in this armored car. Langdon is having like this panic attack because he's claustrophobic. And Sophie does this thing where she puts her hands on his temple and sort of like calms him down. And he's like, "Oh, thanks. That was nice, and it did help." Anyway, they escape. The guy doesn't successfully kill them, which is very stupid. But they hijack the armored.
Crazy ending if he had.
I mean, that's true. It would be a bad story, but like, I wish they had framed it more like, you know, he's like, "Turn around, I'm gonna shoot you," but then he closes the door for no reason. Like, he could have just shot them. He didn't have to close the door.
Oh, it's stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, it's dumb. But anyway, at one point, so they're driving back because they're gonna find Langdon's friend Lee, and Lee's gonna help them get to all this important shit or whatever. But while they're driving, he says a very good line, which he's like, "Okay, so what's going on? You said that you didn't talk to your grandfather for years after you left. You know, what's happening? You know, nobody hates history. They hate their own histories." This is a deep movie, y'all.
That line, I literally, I don't remember what I started doing, but I started like going down my Priory of Sion rabbit hole because I was just like, this movie's too fucking dumb.
I legally cannot comment on that line. If I do, I feel like the Catholic Church and the people who gave me a history degree will retract it. If I said that line in front of a bunch of high schoolers, they would shank me with pencils. Mm-hmm. As they should.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great line, I think. Anyway,
like, I'm getting it tattooed on my chest.
Yeah, that's my first tattoo. They go to Ian McKellen's house. Ian McKellen and Tom Hanks both incredibly wasted in this movie. They act their hearts up, but the lines are so good that it just doesn't pull through. So Ian McKellen is playing Lee Teabing, who is this guy. That's actually an anagram of two of the people who Dan Brown stole the plot of his book's names, which is really funny. I think he admitted in court.
Teabing.
Yeah.
Why would you plagiarize something and leave clues to your plagiarism?
Because he's like the Joker, man.
He's the Riddler. He's the Riddler.
Snowman. He left you all the clues, Mr. Policeman.
He is the Riddler. He's literally like lining up. And you know what? Dan Brown, I hope you lose your lawsuit. I hope you lose all your lawsuits ever for the rest of forever.
This is Todd Phillips' The Riddler.
It's great.
Starring Dan Brown.
So Lee Teabing does use like crutches or canes to walk. So he does have a physical disability, and you know, we should mention that because it unfortunately also becomes a plot point in this book, which sucks very badly. But so anyway, he's talking about how like turns out that the Holy Grail is actually not a cup, but it's, you know, the bloodline of Jesus Christ, and it's like, and also the or no, it's not. Is this where? Or he's like, yeah, no, he thinks it's the bloodline of Jesus Christ, and he's talking about like the search for Mary Magdalene's tomb, etc., etc. He does talk about Constantine a little bit, which is very fun.
He also, you know, of course, says, see, in the Last Supper painting, because we all know it is just truth, right? Like, the Last Supper wasn't actually a painting. It was a photograph, fun fact. And in it, instead of whichever disciple is next to Jesus, I already forgot their name, too many disciples, 12 friends, too many Jesus, is actually Mary Magdalene. And you can tell because she's effeminate. And there are only effeminate women, not men. And they wear matching clothes. They look attached at the hip, and they make a V. You know what V stands for? Vagina. You know who has a vagina? Mary Magdalene. You know what comes out of vagina? Children. That's the chalice. That's the Holy Grail. That's literally what he does. He sounds like a lunatic when you put it together.
Michael, I just want to clip that and put that on like a conspiracy theory like board. Because that's some like fucking Alex Jones level Satanists are running the country. That was beautiful.
So anyway, the monk shows up and tries to kill them, but they beat up the monk, which is very fun. Then the cops also show up, so they take his plane or something. They drive through the woods and they get on a plane. It doesn't matter. I don't know why they took the monk with them. It wasn't necessary. They could have just left him for the cops, but whatever. At one point, while on the plane, Sophie is asking if Silas killed her grandpa. She smacks him across the face, and he's just like, "I am the messenger of God. Each breath you take is a sin." And then she responds, "Your God doesn't forgive murderers. He burns them." That's good shit. That's quality writing.
Also not a thing. That's also just not a thing. Well, I mean, one could argue it should be, right? Then Paul would be in hell, and that is a just world.
Oh, God.
I forgot Michael's anti-Paul.
Yeah, I forgot you were anti-Paul.
I mean, I agree. You're just right.
You were both surprised, and I'm like, guys, come on.
I just forgot.
It's well established. You haven't gone on a Paul rant in a while.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't had the reason.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
Thanks, Aaron.
We see Iringarosa, and he's explaining his evil plan. He's like, we just got to destroy the sarcophagus so they can't do DNA testing. And I would 100% kill Jesus' grandkid. They find a secret clue in the codex, which tells them to go to London. They go to London. They escape the police. It's really boring, but at one point they're, in their car and they're talking or whatever, and that they mention the heir might not even know their own identity, because that's how deep this is. It goes all the way to the top, guys. And
I just absolutely love that everyone is fully into believing that there's a descendant.
Mm-hmm.
That there is a person that this all leads to. Do you know how many people are directly related to, Constantine now? Or, Charlemagne? It's a fuck ton.
Yeah, but, don't you remember, Josh, the Knights Templar the Templars are bad in Assassin's Creed. They're good here. The other
bad in
guy,
real life.
the bad guys have been, systematically hunting down Jesus' disciples over the years. That's why there's only one left.
Yeah.
Well, and there needs to be a chosen one for the narrative to work, so...
That's the important thing. That's right.
Plot armor.
It would just be way more interesting if, the end of Buffy, all of the, descendants of Jesus, and there's just a slideshow of, them turning water into wine.
There's actually,
walking on
1/4 of the world's population are descendants of Jesus.
Oh.
That would be fucking awesome. It's actually everyone now. It's just gone to everyone.
Yeah, it rules. So they follow this other clue to this other church, and it's not the right church, but the butler turns evil. He frees Silas, and they team up, and they're like, gotcha, dweebs. And they're trying to run, but then the butler points the gun at them, and then I think some doves save them.
Mm-hmm. They are saved by literal doves. Aaron, that's what we call symbolism. Don't you know the dove is saving them?
Who's
who's the
true.
dove?
I get it.
Christ.
Oh,
I thought
it all makes sense. This is the best plotted book in the history of books. All the themes.
What they should have done is had them flying in a cross formation, just because, we really need to iron that in there.
And then all the birds, they drive their beaks into hands and feet, driving holes into them.
Yeah, everyone gets a stigmata now.
You get a stigmata.
I thought the Catholic Church thought that doves were the Holy Spirit. I don't really know what you guys think he is. Or they are.
We don't think all doves are the Holy Spirit.
I kind of worded that one wrong, but I do.
That's a choice. Man, okay. Anyway, so the butler drops Silas off at this house, and he's like, "Good job. I'll send the cops to get you later." And Silas is like, "Okay, sure." Sophie, I don't know. She talks to this guy on the bus, and they find out they do an internet search and they found out where they're actually supposed to go. And then the butler toasts with the teacher who, they don't show pointedly. They're like, oh, thank you, teacher. Now a toast to celebrate all our great work. Because I was pretending to be the teacher, but it's actually you. And it turns out it's Lee, and Lee poisons the butler immediately afterwards. And the line right before he dies, he's like, I'll take the secret of your identity to my grave. And then he immediately dies in the next scene. It's really good.
It's just nice to have confirmation right away.
Yeah, no, they did not draw it out at any point. It's so stupid.
Like, right before I die, I'm going to make a lot of resolutions. I'm giving up alcohol. I'm going vegetarian for those last hour. Like, I'm going to be a better person.
I'm going to be a worse person. That's what I've decided. Like,
Michael just orders, like, cigarettes and acid.
Yeah, I'm, like, just going in.
There we go. That's how you have to go out.
Ian McKellening this.
That's not what that means.
Okay, so Silas gets the cops called on him. The cops show up and he's like running and doing his like Assassin's Creed shit. But then, for a reason, Bishop Aringarosa is there. Silas accidentally shoots him and doesn't kill him, which is very funny. And then he's like, I'm so sad because I think I've killed him. So he gets the cops to shoot him. He is immediately killed. Then the French guy, Fash, who has been following Robert Langdon like fucking Captain Ahab across Europe for the past couple days, shows up and he's like, oh, Bishop, you told me that Robert Langdon was the murderer. That's why I beat up that air traffic controller. For no reason. Completely unnecessary scene. But then he's like, anyway, your Silas is dead. Fuck you. Also, you knew the killer's name, so that's why I'm not going to help you anymore. And then he's like, you used me. And then Aringarosa says, God uses us all. And I was like, this movie's a little bit embarrassing, actually.
I'm glad you got there.
This one I actually do apologize for taking us off of what we're talking about, because I was looking at pictures of Silas because I was just amazed by that decision.
I have fun facts for you.
Yeah. Y'all know that there are thirst Tumblr posts about this?
The internet was a mistake.
Not only that, there are fan art.
I'm traveling back in time and telling Al Gore not to invent the internet.
If only he had won the election, things would have gone better.
Well, had he not said I invented the internet, maybe he would have won the election.
I'm going to take a picture because it'll take too long to download and email it to both of you.
Don't send this to me. I don't want to see it.
I will block your number. I will block your number. Okay, then I'm blocking
PG.
your number. I don't care.
It's not good. I had to see it, so do you.
I'm blocking your number, Aaron. You can forward all correspondence in between the Green brothers.
Oh, there's
Sounds
more.
Good. So anyway, they all meet up at the final like clue location in Sir Isaac Newton's tomb. There is a reason why it's Sir Isaac Newton's tomb, but it's actually a very boring reason, so I'm not going to say why that is. But basically, there's Lee, and he's got a gun, and there's Sophie, and there's Robert, and they're like, okay, you, Robert Langdon, or like, Sophie, I'm going to kill Robert, but you can solve this, right? And she's like, no, I can't solve this. And then Robert's like, oh, I can, don't worry about it. So he gives them, like, the secret clue puzzle box that they got from the Swiss vault, and Robert, like, thinks about it for a little while. He turns his back, notably, which is Lee's first mistake. He should have just shot him right there. But then he's like, yeah, sorry, man, I can't do it. And then he throws the thing, and the thing about these cryptexts, as Michael alluded to earlier, is that they're filled with vinegar, and the message is written on papyrus. So if they're opened by force, the vinegar will, the capsule will break, it'll spill vinegar, and it'll ruin the message. And Lee knows this, and he's like, oh no, I don't want that to happen. So he, jumps, and because he uses crutches, he falls, and he's not able to get the gun, so he catches the thing, but it still breaks, and he's like, no, how could you do this? The cops show up. Another great part in this movie is Sophie and Langdon have a gun on this old man who's on the ground, and all the cops show up, and they're like, "Yeah, get that old man."
Yeah.
It's extremely good, and they just let him. Thanks. Good.
You just see that picture now?
Yeah. Anyway, podcast is over.
It's
This
pretty
is
bad,
the Bible
right?
Always featuring Aaron and Michael.
God. So anyway, the cops just let them go. They have nothing to say to them anymore. It's revealed that the password, but like, God, Lee realizes that Robert would never let the fucking map be destroyed. So he's like, "You have it. You know what you have to do. Reveal the secret of Jesus' heir." He's just like a raving lunatic, just screaming as he's taken away. And then Robert Langdon very carefully explains that the password was Apple because that's the orb that wasn't on Newton's tomb or whatever. It's really dumb. Again, password is Apple, which is very bad. So they travel to this chapel, and they go to a secret final zone. They find a trap door, and like there's a cool office there, and supposedly that's where the sarcophagus of Mary Magdalene is. But instead of it's a bunch of genealogy shit, and they realize that Sophie is actually a descendant of Jesus Christ because of various family reasons, and that Jacques Saunier was never her grandfather, but he was actually part of the Priory of Sion. A bunch of the Priory of Sion members show up, including Sophie's biological grandma, I guess, or maybe Saunier's wife. I don't actually know. She says she's his grandma.
Her biological grandma because Sophie looked like she was meeting her for the first time.
Yeah, it's weird.
There wasn't like a familiarity.
Yeah. I mean, there is stuff about why she is Jesus's stuff, like relative, and we could talk about that, but we're not because it's very boring. My favorite part of this movie actually is here, because so Robert Langdon and Sophie are having this final like goodbye talk, and he's like, you might actually be like a real descendant of Jesus, because like maybe that guy in the park will never do drugs again, and you healed my claustrophobia by touching my forehead, so maybe you are a descendant of Jesus. And she's like, sure, I guess, yeah. But then she does this one thing which I really liked, was that she like goes over to this little pool and she like pretends she like tries to step in it and she cannot walk on the water, and she's like, dang it, which I really liked. I thought that was a cute touch, and she's like, maybe I'll have better luck with the wine. So that made this movie worth it for me. Also, at the end, Robert Langdon goes back to the Louvre and finds Mary Magdalene's tomb. It's under the Louvre, and it was there the whole time. It was under the pyramids. It all comes back. I like that in a story. So
well, and
fine.
You know what pyramids are shaped like?
Yeah,
vaginas.
Upside down vaginas, and also right side up vaginas. If you think about it,
those Egyptian pharaohs were horny.
Yeah. That's it. That's what happens.
Movie.
It was credits.
Yeah,
and
great
Jesus
film.
wept.
Yeah, I know, it fucking owned. So, before we get to our extra background information, how do we feel? Any
Rubbing
thoughts?
my face very hard. Aaron, it's not that I didn't like this movie. It's that this movie didn't like me. And I understand what it was trying to do. I respect anything that says fuck the Catholic Church. But at the same time, I couldn't tell if this was saying fuck the Catholic Church enough. Because it was like, fuck the Catholic Church. But technically, they are right.
Yeah, it's actually, this movie has a weird Christianity, pro-Catholic note, which is very strange. And I love that. But, the thing is that on this podcast, it's not often that I get to troll you with my picks. So I kind of appreciate that you didn't like it, because you did make me watch both the Velocipaster and that one guy eating horrible, horrible buckets of slop. So
the Jim Baker bucket. I forgot about that.
I've never forgotten. So I'm not sorry you had to watch this movie.
Yeah, I'm not sorry that you had to suffer, but now here's the thing. I have to retaliate, so...
You get a whole month every year!
I have my
punish me and
next pick.
Josh.
My next pick ready, and it's brutal.
Oh, God.
Going for the jug.
We'll see. We have to talk about background information first. Michael,
Yeah,
do you want to share?
fun facts.
Michael and Josh, do you want to share your background information?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of fun facts and background info. Should I start with? Do I start with the Priory of Sion? Do I start with the Marvel connection? Where do I begin?
Hit us with the Scion, because I have some things I want to say about that as well. And then we'll
Okay.
go into Marvel, and then we'll go into lawsuit.
Yeah, and of course I also have to go into the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail when I go into the Priory of Sion. So, the TLDR is the Priory of Sion was founded in the 50s. And it was an attempt to basically retcon in a badass group to compete with the Templars. And so this guy literally was just like, I don't know, I'm gonna go ahead and make this cool symbol, and I think I'm onto something, and I want to be cool, I want to be badass like the Knights Templar. He falsified documents, like really went in this, and was actually convicted as a con artist. Separate from the Priory of
Unrelated
Sion.
from the cult shit.
Yes.
I also want to
And-
point out, when technically the Priory of Sion ended, which was, it was founded in 1956, and it ended in 1956.
Short-lived.
Yeah, Quibi lasted longer.
Yep. So he actually wrote this book that was saying it, talking basically about the Priory of Sion and their history, which is actually not super interesting. It's a secret society, started in 1099, had grandmasters such as Leonardo da Vinci and Isaac Newton, created the Knights Templar. The Holy Grail is the womb of Saint Mary Magdalene and the royal bloodline. The church had to kill off the remnants, and that's actually what the Cathars, the Templars, all of the above, that the Pope is actually an anti-Pope from the succession of Mary Magdalene. It's some real batshit stuff. They want to reinstitutionalize chivalric knighthood and pan-European nationalism. They want to
that's not good.
No, they want to create a theocratic United States of Europe.
Oh no!
Yes, and they
I've turned around on the Priory.
They also included anti-Semitism.
Yeah, no shit.
Pretends to be shocked. They said that they also were anti-Masonic. You name it. They also, in the 80s, the person who founded it tried to salvage his reputation by retconning his retcon, and no one really listened to him. And so that's actually what the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail is based off of. And that is so it's a book, but it is actually a follow-up to 2 BBC documentaries, because BBC did a documentary on the Priory of Sion and on this bloodline of Christ.
It's very rare that a BBC documentary has a straight-to-book release.
Yes, that's what happened. The TV show came out first, and then they made a book, which was then lifted by Dan Brown. That's how watered down this is.
It's really good. But he did credit them by putting their names as an anagram in his book, so that's kind of like citing your sources.
Well, and if you feel bad for the authors of the Holy Blood and Holy Grail, they compared themselves to the reporters who uncovered Watergate. So
okay, yeah. So Dan Brown's not too far off with the characterizations here.
Yeah, like, you know, it's pretty shitty. But
as much as I dislike like this story, I dislike the idea of people thinking this is real even more.
So as far as literary criticism of the Da Vinci Code goes, Stephen King likened this book to it's the intellectual equivalent of Kraft macaroni and cheese. Stephen Fry has referred to Brown's writing as complete loose stool water.
Love some Stephen Fry for that shit.
However, in 2010, the book appeared at number 43 on the list of 2010's 101 best ever books written. So, I mean, maybe it's a Rotten Tomatoes situation where the critics are wrong, but the fans are right. Maybe.
I almost always side with the critics, and once again, here I am.
I'm just going to throw out 3 places that have come out against this movie. We have one is the Vatican, one is Peru, and one is an organization known as NOAA. And one of these reasons I agree with. Which one do you think I agree with?
It's going to be
Probably
the Vatican.
NOAA.
It's NOAA, National Organization of Albinism and Hypopigmentation. They were right. Yeah, they were like, hey, maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
Maybe don't. If you don't, yeah, just don't make him super bad and evil because he has albinism. That would be cool if you didn't.
Yeah, see, I think that this book teaches Dan Brown to make his villains not stereotypes, because in the first one, the original bad guy was like this, Muslim Hashashin. In this one, it's a person with albinism, which sucks. In the third one, I don't remember if there's like a type for him, but I do remember that his grand plan is to, spoilers for The Lost Symbol, get his dad to sacrifice him with a meteor knife in order to become God. So these are good books, is what I'm saying, and you should all read them.
I'm never reading this.
I just think it's crazy that, like, the kids these days aren't getting literature like this. And what are they getting instead? The Fault in Our Stars. How dare they? We need the Bible back in education.
I will defend The Fault in Our Stars to my death. It gave me +2 points in my ACT.
I don't understand how anyone is upset with that being there when books like this are other options.
It's great. So about Opus Dei, real quick. So Opus Dei is a real organization. It's kind of like, so we have like we talked about when me and Josh talked about orders. We talked about the Jesuits last week, but Opus Dei isn't really an order. It's not like monks. It's more just like, it's like weird people who wanted to be very into Catholicism but didn't want to go so far as to establish their own order. It's just sort of like a Knights of Columbus or like a good old boys club, but
isn't it more or less like a bunch of conservative edgelords?
Yes. You know what? That's exactly right. These are a lot of people that I would have hung out with in high school. And they issued a statement about this book, and largely it was like, yeah, we don't think murder is cool. But one thing I found super interesting in their statement was this. The Da Vinci Code makes it appear that Opus Dei members practice bloody mortifications. In fact, though history indicates that some Catholic saints have done so, Opus Dei members do not do this. The Catholic Church advises people to practice mortification. That's true, but mortification kind of refers to, like, fasting or, like, giving up shit for Lent.
Yeah, it's just get an eating disorder. That's
it. We'll we can talk about that. But in the area of mortification, Opus Dei emphasizes small sacrifices rather than extraordinary ones, in keeping with its spirit of integrating faith with secular life. Some Opus Dei members also make limited use of the silice and discipline, types of mortification that have always had a place in Catholic tradition because they're symbolic reference to Christ's passion. They admit that parts of their organization do the chain belt and beat themselves, which is interesting. right? Like they're
Bold
actually
thing to say out loud.
It's an incredible thing to say. Like if you're like, oh no, this whole book makes us out to be weirdo cultists, except for the weirdo cultist part, we definitely do that. That is true. It's just incredible.
This book offends me because it tells the truth about what we do, but it does it in a rude way.
It's great. The actual worst thing about Opus Dei is that they supported Franco's fascist government in Spain. So if you have a reason to hate Opus Dei, it's that.
They also came lukewarm on Hitler.
Yeah, they have not been historically great about right-wing
Also,
governments.
just a fun fact, they claim that 30% of their membership is celibate. While about 2% are priests.
Weird flex, but okay.
Yeah.
Hey, incels, want a place to hang?
What's up, my fellow incels?
I mean, kind of. Like, that's... We can talk about, like, radicalization, but, like, it is a type of radicalization. It's not a cool type, but there are definitely Catholic radicals that I think probably hang out in groups like this, so...
I would
one of them's on the Supreme Court.
Thankfully, her husband did approve of that.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be a shame otherwise.
More importantly, we need to talk about Marvel.
Marvel.
All right,
Marvel.
what's this connection?
So you also saw that, what's his name? Oscar Isaac got cast as Moon Knight. I'm so happy that we can discuss this. So Moon Knight's history in Marvel is actually
No.
interesting.
We're gonna talk about the holy trinity of Sony's part of Marvel, Disney's part of Marvel, and 20th Century Fox's part of Marvel.
Michael, you just said something twice.
All three of those are represented in this film.
Okay. I know Robert Langdon canonically wears a Mickey Mouse watch. Is that what you're talking about?
Nope. I am talking about Magneto, Sir Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen.
Yes.
I am talking about Paul Bettany, also known as Vision.
Vision.
Yep.
Yes, he's the butler. He's the evil butler.
No, he's Silas.
That's Paul Bettany?
Did you not know that, Bud?
No.
Bud? Are you
This
okay,
part of the
Bud?
podcast where I just read the cast to Aaron and shock him.
I don't know about how people's faces look.
Why'd you wait, you were so confident. Oh yeah, he was the butler.
I thought he because the butler,
fuck, man?
is English, and so is Paul Bettany.
So just like to remind everyone, Ian McKellen was Magneto in 20th Century Fox's version of X-Men. Paul Bettany is a Disney product as Vision. And then last but not least, Alfred Molina, also known as Dr. Octopus from Sony's Spider-Man 2.
I vaguely remember that guy's face from that movie.
That
You
one's
know the
less of a
bishop?
shocker, yeah.
Huh. Neat.
So Marvel has their own holy trinity in this film.
Great. Good.
I
Yeah.
found that more gripping than any of the codex fixing that was done in this.
Yeah.
And then like Mark Spector was a Jewish American rabbi's wayward son, and he was born in Chicago, Illinois. This is before he was known as Moon Knight. Very excited that
No,
Oscar
Moon
Isaac
Knight.
is gonna...
Josh, we're done with the podcast. You don't have to do this.
Yeah, we're done talking about the Da Vinci Code.
I don't trust you.
Unless you have more facts, we're done.
Yeah, I think
that's-
we just have our ratings.
What is everybody's ratings for this film?
I'll go last.
I'm gonna give it one wet ass holy grail.
Why? I should have made my rating beforehand. I think it's number 4. Jesus meets his mother, but instead of his mother, it's like his great granddaughter. So that's kind of related to my normal rating scheme.
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah.
I am going to give this 1 out of 5 vaginal cups because that's all the Holy Grail is.
Great. Good. Well, after this great film, it's going to be hard to follow this up, but it's time for our monthly book club. So, Josh, what is your pick for our monthly book club?
So we have been tasked with reading 101 questions about Christianity. Did I get that name right?
It's 101 questions about the Bible and Christianity, but very good guess.
Right, yeah. So the reason I picked this is because I believe it's issue 3 or 4, has a picture of what I believe are 3 velociraptors and starships shooting in the background. I want to know what question led them to that answer. So we're going to read the first 3 issues and come back with the answers.
There's some good answers. I've read the first one already. It's we're gonna be talking about some stuff. I'm looking forward to it. When we are not trying to hurt each other with the worst products known to mankind, where can people find us on the internet?
I am at Green History on Twitter.
I'm at Michael's Diamonds on Twitter.
I'm at AaronSXL on Twitter. You can listen to the other podcast I do at Mortified Pod. After this episode goes up, me and Layla are going to watch the movie Willy's Wonderland featuring National Treasure's Nicolas Cage. It's like Five Nights at Freddy's, but if Nicolas Cage was there and he killed all the puppets. So not looking forward to that. But yeah, if you think that would be interesting, please go ahead and give us a listen there. But as we weep over the lost secret of the Holy Grail, just remember that it's okay to cry, because even Jesus wept. We'll see you all next week.